Farm Bureau. Luke Johnson joins us, co-host of the Eagle Hour. Southern Miss hits the road this week. They're going to Jonesboro to take on Arkansas State. This past weekend, it was Tulane at home. And, well, Luke, that sucked.
It was tough. You look at really the first couple drives, Tulane drove down and kind of pushed Southern Miss defense around, and Eagles came right back. And one of the biggest turning points of the game was on the first offensive drive. Southern Miss goes for it. They put Frank Gore in the super back. He fakes a run and pulls up and misses a wide open Justin Reed, who he could have moonwalked into the end zone. I mean, and they should have tied the game there. Had an opportunity on the second drive and missed a field goal, and so Eagles probably should have been up either 14-7 or 10-7 at the half, and couldn't really do anything in the second half. Had an opportunity inside the 10-yard line and had to settle for a field goal, and it's just a lot of frustration. Just nothing was finished. They would occasionally get something started and couldn't finish. Defense overall, they played probably good enough to win, but just kind of the message was it stinks, as you said, simply because you can't finish. And Will Hall yesterday on the Eagle Hour just understands the frustration and the criticism and gets it, and says that people are certainly entitled to feel that way.
I said yesterday, when you kind of look at the score and you look at the numbers and kind of the way that it unfolded, it feels like there's a line of scrimmage problem for Southern Miss. And I heard what you said about the defense. Jay Stanley's been incredible through 3 games. But I don't think you have the issues running the ball and being productive offensively if you're good up front. Is that a fair assessment that there is an issue up front, maybe on both sides of the line of scrimmage?
I mean, I would definitely say there's a whole lot bigger concern on the offensive side. Will made a statement yesterday that, the backs may have missed some holes. I'm not going to critique him or argue with him on that. He's watched the tape 1,000 more times than I have. There was no push. Several times on the offensive side, backs were hit in the backfield. Billy Wiles was throwing off his back foot several times. They got a grounding call that was pretty tic-tacky, but Wiles just kind of launched it off his back foot and kind of found himself, being, on the run a lot. And I think it speaks to that. On the defensive side, I feel like that can get a whole where there has been some questions or whatever. I just feel like they're too good up front defensively that I'm not so much concerned about that side. And I mentioned this last week. Florida State. They got 4 big plays and it cuts their rushings in half. Tulane, ran the ball decently, but the Eagles is still 314 yards. Looking at a Tulane offense, even without Michael Pratt. So for me, the concern is the offensive line, which, if you look at transfer portal wise, is really the only place that they didn't really get much or get a big transfer. And it may have been because they felt that this group had depth and experience, but that's the biggest concern for me.
When we talked last week, I think you and I both kind of talked about the fact that it felt like that game against Tulane was a bit of a barometer, right? For, the season can go this way or it can go this way based on the outcome of this one game. I wonder if we overstated that at all, because it is one game and it was the 3rd game of the year, or if that was pretty accurate. And while, yes, there are some opportunities in the short term, you're going to face some teams down the stretch that are either as good as or maybe even better than Tulane.
What I think, what I hope, and I think Southern Miss fans hope, that they hope that you look up in 3 weeks and you say, Florida State and Tulane were 2 of the top 3 or 4 teams that you play all season long. And so possibly later in the season, 21-3 to Tulane is not a good loss, but it's you feel better about yourself losing that game where you did not capitalize on opportunities. I mean, where you missed wide open throws, where they had a couple returns that they were just literally like half a block away from busting one. So, yeah, I mean, of course, what South Alabama did in Stillwater, that pops at you. But James Madison beat Troy on the road.
Yep.
And so, you look at that. And Texas State, of course, they played a FCS opponent, but they put 77 up, and you're looking at them in a week, in a couple weeks. So I feel like if Tulane is what they were last year, you will feel better about the 21-3 loss than you do right now.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. What? I'm trying to decide to be careful how I ask this and try to tiptoe around it, or if I'm just going to be blunt. And I think I'm just going to be direct.
Be blunt.
Why do Southern Miss fans not care? Like I don't get it anymore. We've talked about crowds and fans and needing stadiums, and somebody gave me a hard time because we were talking last week about, if you had multiple screens up, which game would you watch? And I didn't say Southern Miss. I also forgot that Ole Miss was playing that night during the conversation. Point being, I was sitting in Rice Stadium, and I had the Southern Miss Tulane game on my computer and watched as much of it as I could, and I kept going, why is there nobody there? This is a big game. So, why?
I think for the diehards, they're there no matter what. Obviously,
Sure.
You're dealing with a smaller fan base than other schools in this state, in this region. The diehards will be there no matter what. Then you have people that overreact, and they don't realize that you got blown out by a playoff team. And then there's some people that didn't want to bake at 3:00 in the afternoon. I don't think that's the excuse. I do think that was a factor. I think there would have been a bigger crowd. But the fact of the matter is, just to be blunt back, they haven't beaten anybody. They beat Tulane last year, but Will was talking about it yesterday. I mean, when's the last time that Southern Miss actually beat someone of significance?
Yeah.
Because every time a team, will come, you don't beat them. I know you beat this team last year, but I do feel like too that Southern Miss suffers more than some programs now because of you have a smaller circle of a fan base with other things going on, the general business of the culture, and the ability to watch in every way. I think it's just more obvious at Southern Miss when you're missing, 10 to 20% of people that you would normally have had those not other things going on. So attendance as a problem across the country is going to show up a lot more obvious at Southern Miss than anywhere else.
Let's end this on a positive note. Headed to Jonesboro on Saturday of this weekend, to me, feels like an opportunity for a win. And need to play well. It also feels like an opportunity to go in and not just win, but really leave Jonesboro feeling good about yourself. Am I crazy there?
No, I think you're exactly right. Will also said there's been some player meetings the last day or two, and to me that speaks that guys are realizing that this team's more capable of what they've done and or what they've shown, not just in wins and losses, but actually finishing plays and games and such. So when I hear that, I see accountability, and so I think guys in some ways are looking forward to this week for an opportunity to show on the road more of what they're capable of. And so That really did me good to hear that, because I know as a former player, when guys start stepping up in the locker room and saying, hey, we're going to get this right, then it's coming from the bottom up, which a lot of times has more lasting effect than just if coaches get after your tail.
Yeah. Certainly hope that's the case. It's a team that has worked as hard as anybody to get to this spot, and it's hard. It's hard when you drop a couple early in the season. So Southern Miss is going to try and get it moving in the right direction on Saturday in Jonesboro. Luke, always good to catch up with you. I'm sure we'll talk later in the week.
Thanks, Richard.